Hello and welcome everybody to today's broadcast. Tremendous week for me over here. The kids today, like this week, they have a short week. Monday, everybody enjoyed the holidays. We were able to spend the day with our kids, and then tomorrow they actually have the day off as well. So there's just been a lot of things to juggle. But I hope that you guys have had a great week. I want to take a moment and just thank you for your support. Thank you for joining us, whether you're here live or you're watching the replay. We've continued to have emails come in and people share their experience and share their thoughts about what they've learned. And I want to encourage you, please take part in what's going on here. It's one thing to listen, but I want to take a moment and encourage you to really apply, what you're learning. Apply something that you receive that can add value to you and your family. Apply it and watch what happens. I'm thinking of an example. Last week, we received an email where somebody, or a comment where somebody took some things that they learned about, how they respond to their kids, and how when we respond and we listen carefully, it opens up a bridge of communication and love between us and our kids. And they picked up their kid from school. He was upset and was crying. And normally the parent would have responded in like an attackful way. And so what she did is she took a moment, held her composure, and then responded and by asking to find out what the real problem was. And then she wrote in the comment as she was writing it, she was like had tears because she saw like her son's face just light up in joy, and how it opened up a flood of love and relationship between them. And so, I think she even commented that the face that he had when she responded that way versus an old way was priceless. So I encourage you. It's awesome. I thank you for that feedback, and definitely want to hear about how this show is helping you in your life. So don't be shy. Put it in the comments. Email us. That adds fuel to what we're doing. However, you all know this is why we do what we do. If this show doesn't do any good, if it's just out there, there's no point. I won't waste my time. There's many other things to do. But I believe that what we have is valuable. I believe that what we're doing is important. There's so many families and so many parents that really could use an encouraging word, that can use a little bit of this and a little bit of that to help add value to what they're doing with their kids. So I really appreciate the feedback. Don't forget about our website, parentingaccurately.com. I have a guide there that's completely free to you guys. If you go to that page, you can get that now. Download my free guide on, it's a 7-day guide on how to build a connection with your teen. That connection with our teens sometimes is the hardest thing to navigate. It's easy to navigate our relationship with our kids when they're young, but as they get older, how many of you know they develop their own personality, attitude, their willpower, and suddenly, parents don't know anything. So at least that's what my kids think or thought. But that guide is just a very practical, gives some practical ways that you can build and increase your connection with your teens. So I want to thank you guys I want to make that available to you guys. I also want to share real quick our sponsor for the week, Preside Management. They are a farm labor contractor. They also manage the bookkeeping and payroll for other companies. So if you're a business owner out there and you need some help, Preside Management is a great resource, and they are doing a great thing by helping to sponsor this show all week long. So I want to thank you guys, everybody, for that. And last but not least, before I welcome our guest, we are starting our YouTube page. How many is brand new? We had a vision for January. We decided to go for it. We decided that I am. So here we are, going for it, 100 miles an hour. But you can find all of these videos, all of the lives that we've done. They're here on Facebook, but if you'd like to go through them, they're also on YouTube. So I want to make that available to you. So very excited about what we're going to talk about today. Today we are going to be talking about how to strengthen and build our family relationships. The parent to the family relationship will directly impact the value and the flow, in a sense, of our relationship with our kids. So I'm excited about our guest today, Kami Schaal. I want to welcome you. Thank you for joining us. Kami is, I'd like to say she's like a rock star mom, a rock star family. I had the pleasure of sitting and having dinner with you and some other friends last week in San Diego, or I'm sorry, last month in San Diego. And it was so good. I mean, we've seen each other throughout the last few months online and on some of the other things that we're working on, but it was great just to sit down and have a meal and talk about what's happening. Your
Yeah, and it was
experience.
great to meet in person.
Yes, I know, right? So many times nowadays we meet people online or through social media, and we may actually, that may be like the source of communication for a while. And then when you meet them in person, it's like, oh,
Mhm.
okay, great. It's another level.
You feel like you've known them forever, though. Like
It,
I felt like I knew you when I
yeah,
saw you. It was just the opportunity to actually be in the same space and talk for a period of time. Yeah,
yeah,
it was nice.
yeah, it was great. But you are doing so much. You're a nurse. Um, you're an avid aromatherapist. You're a
Hmm.
mom to a wonderful boy, a special needs young man.
Yes.
And I mean, I could not imagine like what it must take to navigate all of those things. You have to be solid. You have to be centered.
Yeah, I had to get, I mean, so my son who has autism, Jeffrey, he's 17, and I loved what you were just talking about teenagers because I have three teenagers right now. So, well, my daughter's 20, but she just turned 20, so she's still kind of in that period of time. And then I have Jeffrey, he's 17, and he's the one who has autism, and then I have a 13-year-old. So just newly into the teenage years, navigating that with him. And I would say, after being a mom for 20 years now, um, that the biggest piece of it was figuring out my own junk
Mm-hmm.
so that I wasn't bringing with me generational stuff. And I love my parents, but I think every family kind of has their thing. And I, of course, had my own baggage from my childhood. And honestly, having a special needs child, and he was also not just from a like a developmental standpoint or school standpoint. His difficulties were also very medical. So a lot of emergency room visits, a lot of hospital stays, a lot of disruption, a lot of really scary moments. Afraid for his life kind of stuff.
Wow.
And yeah, and I had to, and I was also parenting two other kids at the same time, right? Like trying to deal with my own emotions and having to drop everything at the like that to go run off to the hospital with him, and maybe I would be gone for a week and
Wow.
leave my toddler and my elementary school kid at home, right? Like with somebody else caring for them. I felt very, very torn as a mom, especially early on. And so I had to figure out, how to leave my junk, my like shame and guilt or whatever I had built up, and just really lean into the fact that I was a really good mom. I
Yeah.
mean, I literally saw a therapist because I just felt like I was failing at everything. You know, Jeffrey's situation was just out of control. The other two kids needed me. I couldn't be there for them. I was working at the time as a nurse, night shift in the hospital, so I was chronically sleep deprived. And I finally started working with a therapist because I really felt like I was unraveling. And she kept saying, like, you don't give yourself enough credit for how much of a good mom you are. Like, you need to start owning that piece of your own, like yourself, that you're a really good mom, and that even though the circumstances are really hard right now, you're still a really good mom. Like, you're not missing the mark. I just felt like I was constantly messing up and missing it and losing time, right? Because it was a long time. I mean, Jeffrey, it was a decade, really, the first decade of his life of really hard stuff. And so I've had to lean into that, and I'm glad to say that I'm on the, like, I went through that. Like, I crossed over that mountain. I went through that tunnel. Like, I want to help parents who are in the thick of it, because I remember being in the thick of it.
Right. And how important
Yeah.
was like relationship in that moment? I mean, obviously, I mean, I think going through things like that, number one, would put a strain on all of your close relationships. Obviously, the closest one, meaning your husband.
Yeah.
How Could you speak on that a little bit?
Oh yeah, gosh, I could speak on that for days. So my husband and I actually started dating in college. We teased. I always tell him I was like, I was a teenager. I was 19. It was like 13 days before my 20th birthday that my husband and I started dating. So he's only 4 months older than me. It's not like he was that much older, but
Right.
we've been together for a long time. And one of the first meetings that we had with the social worker who came because Jeffrey had a hearing loss. That was like the first clue that something was wrong. That was when he was 9 months old. 9 weeks old. I'm sorry. So we had a 4-year old. Megan was 4 at the time. We got Jeffrey's initial diagnosis. Early intervention gets involved at that point, and they sent the social worker out. She kind of did like the intake,
Mm-hmm.
piece. All the family dynamics, resources, kind of setting up some things for him. And one of the first things she said in the meeting, which I'm not sure it was the best thing to say first thing, but one of the first things she said was, so now you have a special needs child, and I'm here to tell you that the rate of divorce is 85%. There's an 85% chance that you guys
Wow.
will get divorced. And so here we had been sucker punched already, by his hearing impairment. And we were told he was deaf. That was his first diagnosis. So that was just horrible, tragic, crying in bed at night, crying out to God, looking at my beautiful, perfect baby boy and saying, like, he can't hear me. He's never going to hear my voice. I'm his mom.
Wow.
I sing to him and he can't hear me. Like, it was super emotional, and then we get this, and we're navigating now, the early intervention system and Medicaid for his medical bills because he needed hearing aids and like all this stuff that was so overwhelming. And then she says, yeah, there's an 85% chance your marriage is going to implode.
Oh my
and,
gosh. Wow.
and I was like, and now I come from a family of divorce. My parents are divorced. And they have been since I was very young. I was 2 when my parents got divorced. And that was the one thing when my husband proposed to me, before I said yes, I said, do you promise we'll never get divorced? Now, I do realize nobody could ever really make that, but in that moment, that was what I needed him to answer,
Right.
And of course, he was like, of course, I'm not proposing to you to think we're getting divorced. Like, so
Yeah.
that made it really heavy for me to think like, wow, we're really fighting an uphill battle. And if you know me, the people that know me the best is when I am faced with a challenge. That's when I am like
Bring it
a
on.
lion going in for the kill, like 85%. Well, I'm going to be that 15%. And not only am I going to stay married, but I'm going to have a killer marriage. Like, that's the work I'm going to do.
Right.
And we really did. And it wasn't easy. I'm not saying like we made a choice that day and we were like, hey, sunshine and rainbows, like forever. No, there's been some really hard times. But I think the biggest piece for us, I've been thinking about this lately, the biggest piece was understanding how each other grieved. So with a special needs kid, and I think even other kids who struggle, maybe kids who struggle with addiction or, chronic health issues or that kind of thing, there is that grieving process because right when you're pregnant with that baby, you kind of have this vision. And he was our first son. So I know from my husband, it was sports and, he's going to play this, he's going to play baseball. I can't wait for him to do this. None of which Jeffrey's been able to do, nor is he interested in doing. And he may not have been interested anyway, right? It may not have been him, but especially with the special needs diagnosis, like my husband kind of was like, wow, all those things I imagined. So you have these visions for your kids, you have these dreams for them, how you imagine your family is going to be, and they're shattered. And
Right.
so there's a grief process that happens, and everybody grieves differently. And I am the type of person that when I'm faced with a challenge, I go in, I start learning, I do research, I talk about it incessantly. I want to become the expert. I want to find the people that can help me, the resources. And my husband is very much the person where he's like, blanket over the head. If I don't talk about it, maybe it will go away person. And clearly, totally opposite. We're very alike in many ways, but we grieve very opposite of each other. And that caused so there I was. He would get home from work and I would be like, oh, honey. So I went on this website, blah, blah, blah. I found this, I found that, I found that. We could do this therapy. We could drive, we can fly across country and do this, or we can, whatever. And he was like, la, 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 la. I don't want to deal with it. Right.
Right.
So we had to figure out how to be respectful of each other in their grief. And so my husband had to pull himself out of that. I don't want to deal with it, and have conversations, right, for me. And I also had to tone down my constant in your face, let's have a conversation, let's fix this, let's talk about it. Like, this is our life is now. I would just immerse myself in that. And we've had to do that. Like, once we kind of learned that was the pattern, we've been able to, we continue to revisit that because Jeffrey continues to grow. I mean, he's a senior this year. So now we have not a special needs child, we have a special needs adult.
Right.
That is going to need, we're going to need to be different parents for him than we were when he was 4, and different resources, and the realization that we'll never be empty nesters. Like, we're not going to have that retirement you dream of like my husband and I sitting on a beach drinking umbrella drinks, right? It's going to be my husband, Jeffrey in the middle, and me. It's going to be the 3 of us,
right,
off into the sunset. Not good or bad, just different than what we imagined it would be.
Yeah.
Right? So some of those things we still continue to work through, but we're much better at picking up on the patterns. So I will say, hey, Dan, like, I really need you to engage with me in this situation. And then he'll also say sometimes, I need some time. Like, I'm not ready to talk about it yet, or I'm not, so that open communication has been really important. And I think, so that was a big piece, the grief, understanding that. And then obviously our faith, huge.
Yeah.
When you have a situation like that that's completely out of your control, you thank God I had Jesus in those moments in the hospital. And I'm grateful that my husband and I were very much on the same page about our faith, and really just clung to Jesus, because we didn't have answers for a long time, and a lot of unknown and a lot of really scary, scary, dark times. But he kept us afloat all those years, still continues to.
Yeah. I can imagine that there are seasons where you just felt like, I can't do this.
So many. So many. Yeah. And I didn't have I was working at the same time too. So I was working part-time night shifts, and my husband was working full-time as a teacher. And, there wasn't a lot of extra time. I didn't have the ability to be like, I'm just not going to work and just care for my kids full-time. We didn't have the financial resources to do that. And I just, I would say, it's maybe a weird analogy for people, but this is what I'm a visual person. So this is what I would imagine. Like, we were on like a merry-go-round at a carousel. I mean, not a carousel, like a carnival. And we're on the merry-go-round, but it was an evil carnival. So the merry-go-round driver, like, I would want to get off, and he would be like, nope, you're going again. Nope. So every time I kind of wanted to step out of the chaos of our life, something else would happen. Jeffrey would get sick. We'd have a financial crisis. Something would happen at work. It felt like our life, we were constantly in survival mode. And there were times I would break down and like, please God, like, make this stop, make this horrible merry-go-round of just surviving from one thing to the next, like, make it stop. And it'd be so sad for me. I'd be at the park with the kids, or we have a beautiful like rails to trails system here. So I would, go for a walk with the kids, and, I'd see these, now in my mind, perfect families, right? Nobody's perfect, but that's what it felt, cute little mom and dad and 3 little kids riding their bikes. Like, they'd be cute little ducklings behind them, and I would just be in the suck.
The picture perfect.
Yeah. And I would be like, I haven't slept in 4 days. My kid just got out of the hospital. My 3-year-old's having a meltdown because he hasn't seen mommy in 5 days. And I have to go back to work tonight because I already missed enough work. And so now I haven't slept in 4 days, and now I get to go work 12 hours night shift.
Wow.
Life is great. Yeah, there was definitely some really, really rough times.
Yeah. And now, like, I'm sure you've learned as you've went through those experiences, and you've learned how to deal with certain situations and how to pick and choose what you're going to focus on and what you're going to take on, right? With your relationship with your kids, and
Mm-hmm.
it I'm thinking about, I know that many that are watching, have spouses, and some are supportive, some may not be, and then there are some people that are listening that are single, and or maybe have an ex that's just a pain to deal with,
Yeah.
and then you have kids, and so there's so many things to juggle. And how would you tell somebody, or try to encourage somebody else to choose what it is that you need to focus on? Because I think sometimes we focus on the wrong things.
Yeah. I think it's a matter of really understanding your priorities.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, a long time ago, somebody said, um, the only people that God gives you, like that you're responsible for in this world, is your spouse and your children. So everything else you may need to let go. And I did not have a ton of really close girlfriends when my kids were little. I wasn't the mom who went out to lunch, or I had friends, but I couldn't invest in those relationships like maybe they could. Because my life was just different than theirs. And so I really prioritized my relationship with my husband and my relationship with my children. And I felt like if I can get that foundation right, then everything else is going to be okay. And I had to let a lot of other things go. So I would say for parents who are really struggling with that, like whether they're single parents or, doing it by themselves, even if they're married, which
Yeah.
sometimes happens, get really clear about your priorities and what you are responsible for, like what you can control somewhat and what you're responsible for, and just lean into that space, because that's all you can really do on any given day. And the rest you've just gotta leave it to God to take care of, really.
Right. I
You
think it's true. I like what you said, where you have to choose. Sometimes you have to choose relationships,
know.
and maybe sacrifice some that are convenient but not necessary, and that's hard.
Yeah. Oh, and I mean, please, I wanted to be the mom who went out to lunch,
Mm-hmm.
with her girlfriends every Friday. I wanted to be the mom who could, at the drop of a hat, take my kids away for the weekend, or go out for drinks on a Friday night, but the bottom line was I was working Friday nights so that I could get Jeffrey to all of his appointments during the week, because
Right.
that was when, that was available. So it was hard. I had some times then where I was very lonely. But now on the other side of that, as a mom, now that I actually can do those things, I can go out to lunch. I can, go out on a Friday night if I want to. I'm so grateful that I did sacrifice that, because
Right.
my family, like, we're all reaping the benefits of the seeds that were sown in those
Yeah.
early years,
Wow. And so now you could look back and you see, like, it was all worth it. It was all worth it.
Every single minute, every minute. And, I went on such a journey because I realized too that, nobody nobody cared about Jeffrey as much as I did. And
Nobody.
my husband, like him and I, right?
Right.
Like, in the world, any doctor that we had, any therapist that we had, any teacher that we had, like, nobody loved him as much as we did. So we needed to be the ones steering the ship.
I firmly believe that. I think that so many times it's easy to happen, and no condemnation to anybody that's maybe been here, but it's there's a connection. I believe it's a God-given connection between the parents and the kids. And I think that so many times parents, and I was one at one point, so many times it's easy to pass on that responsibility. Our kids are going through something. I don't really feel equipped to deal with it. It's above me. So, I'm going to pass you on to somebody else so they can fix you. When actually people don't understand that a hug or a kind word or a gesture of love to our kids can go so far and can solve and help heal and change our kids, like more than pills, more than counseling, more than, and there's a place and a time for those things,
Oh
but
yeah.
that's like a last resort. Just the
Well,
connection between our kids. It's powerful.
I feel like what we've done from a medical perspective and a parenting perspective is we have handed over our power
Exactly.
to other people. And we need to take that power back. And I'm not saying
Yes.
that, you shouldn't seek right help when you need it. Like I had therapists coming to the house. I had counselors coming to the house. Social workers at the school and teachers, educators of special needs kids. Like I definitely had, doctors as well, right? Like I had people on my team, but who was the captain?
You were.
Me,
Exactly. Yep.
right? And so you can't ever lose sight of who's actually in charge,
Yeah.
you
That's
know?
powerful.
And you definitely feel there were times where I was nervous. This is my most vulnerable kid. What if I make a decision um, that's not the right one, like going against medical advice sometimes is what I did because they recommended a medication or something I didn't want. I knew too
Hmm.
much about, so I chose something different for him. But I feel very strongly that we are stronger than we give ourselves credit for. And that intuition, that like motherly instinct, fatherly instinct, that intuition that we have with our children, we have to hone that skill. And we need to actually listen to that voice. I believe our faith. I believe
Yeah.
it's the Holy Spirit, right, guiding us. But you are the only one. Like God gave you that child, whether that child was in your womb or you adopted that child or it's your stepchild or whatever. There is a reason why that child is in your life. And so you need to lean into you being the expert in that situation, that driving force, and that intuition is just going to help guide you. It's very powerful when you lean
Yeah.
into it.
And I think that I found that most parents have that when their kids are small.
Mm-hmm.
They'll wake up in the middle of the night because they just know that something's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And so then they go into the room where their baby's sleeping and they find out, yeah, there's something wrong. But
Mm-hmm.
yet, we kind of, as they get older, the significance of that connection and the significance of that role seems to change. Like we
Mm-hmm.
forfeit it, and parents just
Mm-hmm.
hand it over. They hand it over for many, a myriad of reasons. Like there's all
Yeah,
kinds of
they get
reasons.
busy.
Busy, that's huge. It's
Yep.
hard. uh, and
Navigating. Yeah.
yeah,
When your
just
kid's
navigating,
talking
and
back to you, it's much harder to
it
navigate.
is. But the power that we have, and the influence that we have with our kids is immeasurable. We just have to not disconnect from that baby stage, the young child stage. They're completely vulnerable. They need you. You know
Mm-hmm.
that. And they learn to trust you.
Yeah.
And so,
And
the,
I'll tell you, I mean, now having a 20-year-old, having a sophomore in college, that connection is even more important now. Like that foundation that I laid, um, she probably reaches out to me almost every single day. We are very, very close, and it's not a me telling her what to do because your relationship starts to shift as they get older. So
mm-hmm,
it's more like, hey, mom, can I talk to you about this? And she wants me to make a decision for her, but she's also an adult, so I don't make decisions for her. I let her work it through, but with me, right? Like bouncing things off of me and that sort of thing. And I almost feel like our relationship is not more important, but as equally as important as it was when I was teaching her, how to be safe and when she crossed the street,
right.
right? Like there's so much stuff that comes up in young adulthood and college and navigating those times. And my 13-year-old, I mean, he's in eighth grade. Middle school is weird, y'all. Like middle school is they're all weird. There's a lot of hormones, there's a lot of drama, and being able to draw him close when he really wants to pull away. He's
Mm-hmm,
13, so he wants
yeah.
that, he wants to pull away, but knowing when those moments are there that like I've got to continue to draw him close because the reality of life, especially navigating teenagerdom, is that the only unconditional love that you tend to get during those times is from your parents. So
Right.
let's be that unconditional love for them because the world does not give that to them. Social
Yeah.
media does not give that to them. Their friends at school do not give that to them.
Yeah.
And we all crave that, right?
There's countless times that my kids have come to me and they're upset because, they had a friend who they considered a best friend, and then the next day they're gone. And I've told them that, like,
You're like
don't.
the gum on somebody's shoe. They like
Right.
don't even remember who you are. You're like the worst human being in the world. Like, yeah,
Exactly. So
yeah,
for parents to stay active in their kids' life and through the teenage years, I believe is invaluable. It's so important.
vitally important.
Yeah.
Vitally important.
There's
Absolutely.
like nobody could take the place of your parent. Like,
Well, so interesting. When I did some therapy when my kids were little, just to kind of work through actually my own parents' divorce. Like I had some stuff come up when I was a mom. So when my daughter turned 2, that's the age my parents got divorced. I kind of had some of this stuff come up, and I went to see a therapist and kind of talk through it, And she used to work. She was telling me a story of how she worked. I think she worked with children, but that were institutionalized, like psychotic breaks and stuff like that. Really tragic stuff. But she said even those kids who were awfully neglected by their moms, like beaten, neglected, horrible, horrible stuff we don't even want to talk about or think about. She said those children still asked for their mothers.
yeah.
Like that's how the bond
Wow.
is. That's how strong that bond is, even
Yep.
after that bond being violated by their parent. It's just that bond is so, so important. And I believe the same for dads. Like I
Yeah.
don't discount,
Sure.
the father's piece at all. And that really struck a chord with me, that like this is the bond that I'm creating, and this is how important this bond is for my children. And so I just need to show up,
Right.
right? I don't have to be perfect. I am quick to tell my kids, guys, I really messed that up. Like I lost my temper, or, I ignored you. I was on my phone too much or too focused on work, or, whatever it may be. I'm quick to say that increases the bond,
Right. Yeah.
because they're not expecting you to be perfect.
Right. One of the episodes, recent episodes, I had my guest Libby. She was on, and one of the things that she said that I really liked was that I want my kids to have the mentality and the heart posture and have that relationship with my kids to where if they find themselves in trouble or they find themselves maybe even they did something wrong or they're ended up in a situation that's bad, to think like, oh man, I need to go talk to my parents, instead of, oh crap, I've got to hide this from my parents.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
that's
And I've told my kids, I mean, and my daughter tells me everything, and sometimes she tells me too much. Like in high school, there were times I was like, I kind of not sure I want to know all of the details of that. But I'm glad she told me. I never told her that. I just kind of sat
right.
there cringing sometimes, like, oh. But I've always told my kids that, that there's literally nothing you can say to me
Yeah.
that would make me not love you. So come to me, tell me, let's navigate this together. I'd rather know than not know. And I'm sure that I can help you through this situation. You may still need to, be punished or, whatever. Like,
Yeah. There's still laws. There's still rules. There's still
still
consequences.
rules. It's not like a carte blanche,
Right.
but but I'm here for you and I want to advocate for you. And I would like to be able to help you through those tough lessons,
Yeah. Yeah. That hand that, sometimes, just imagine somebody, walking through a bunch of fog and you can't see very clearly, but if you have the hand of somebody that's there with you, you suddenly have confidence. You can navigate, you can go through things that are hard. And you talk about middle school. I know you're over on the East Coast, I'm on the West Coast, and sometimes the cultures of different states are different, but man, here in the West Coast, middle school is brutal. And maybe it is there too.
Brutal.
I cannot imagine.
Brutal.
I mean, my daughter shared things with me, like you said. It's like, whoa, I really don't need to know that. But like you said, I'll never tell them that because I never want them to feel like they can't talk with me or they shouldn't. I'd rather them come and spill their guts to me than to somebody else who's going to just take that and then take advantage of them and lead them down the wrong way.
Give them unsound advice.
Exactly. Yeah. But middle school is, I have no words for it.
It is weird. They're just weird. I mean, it's like a yucky time, I think.
Yeah.
I think they don't know who they are. So they're trying to be all the same person, which doesn't work so well. There's this like pecking order, hierarchy, and
Yeah.
it's just a rough,
But
rough time.
when I was in middle school, there wasn't, the social media that there is now. I mean, cell phones weren't even out yet. They were,
Mm-mm.
it's like, I remember through high school they started coming out, and
Oh, you are younger than me. We had beepers in high school.
I remember beepers too. Yeah, I remember beepers. You were a drug dealer if you had a beeper, um, or a doctor. You were either a doctor or a drug dealer.
Uh-huh,
but
yeah.
um, but I remember like processing. I mean, the kids basically process the same things that we had to process. It's a different world, and so the way they're doing it now, though, the way they're navigating and processing, the changes into puberty and the changes in their body and their mind and their emotions, um, they process it outwardly. They process it on social media. So then
Mm-hmm.
everybody sees things that they shouldn't see. And they get,
Yeah.
I believe that if we don't protect our parents, if we don't guard them from that, um, they'll have a different idea of what's normal and what's
Mm-hmm.
acceptable. Uh, my kids don't have phones when they're in middle school. And I know,
Mm-hmm.
and trust me, that makes it inconvenient. It would be convenient for we have one
Yeah.
kid we have one kid that's in middle school, and it would be convenient if they had a phone. I'd be able to communicate with them. It would be great.
Mm-hmm.
But I've seen firsthand like what that can do to somebody, and it's not worth
Yeah.
it. It's not worth
Well, and
it.
what I did with my daughter early on, especially in middle school, because she got her phone, I think, in sixth grade. So we opted a little bit differently than you guys did for
Yeah,
different reasons. I was
sure,
working, I was night shift. There was some
for sure.
safety stuff that we needed, right? So, but a big thing that I think really helped was we would actually look through Instagram was the thing at the
Hmm.
time for her, and we would look through Instagram, and we would look through her friends' pictures, like not to stalk them, but just kind of, I would sit next to her and we would talk about what Megan was seeing.
Yeah,
So, like, if it was a girl at the beach, taking the cute little, like, look at me in my bikini, right? But she's also like 14. I would say, okay, what is this? Like, what do you see? Her intention was maybe X, but what do
right.
you see? Because it only matters what's perceived. And
Yeah,
so and then we would talk about what my daughter would want somebody to perceive about her, you know? And so then if you're thinking about the perception, then you've got to be really mindful about what you're putting out there.
for sure.
And it was just a really good conversation. And it's really interesting now that she's 20, she's on social media, but barely.
Yeah,
And she shut off her own social media her entire like second half of freshman year and all of sophomore year. She got
wow.
off social media, her own. She was
Yeah,
like, I'm too focused on it. I'm shutting it down. And then now, I mean, I'll even say to her, she studied abroad for 5 weeks, and I would message her and say, can you please post a picture, because you're in a beautiful place and I want to see it. Like,
right,
I want to make sure you're alive. Like, I would like to know what you're seeing. I know you're in these incredible places. Oh, sorry, mom. Sorry.
right.
you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, and everybody has their own style, and everybody has their own way. There's no perfect way to parent, right? And
Mm-mm.
fortunately, there are ways that parents can stay informed on what their kids are doing, what they're watching, what
Mm-hmm.
they're going, how they're interacting, and there's a lot of controls on phones that are available now. So,
Mm-hmm.
uh, if you're out there and you can relate to this and you would agree that kids are exposed to too many things, well then take some action. And if you haven't done it, take action. Go through. There's a lot of tutorials online that'll show you how you can set up some controls on the phone so the kids only have access to certain things. Even with my high schooler, she does have a phone now, but I have it set on a schedule. So,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want her up at 1 or 2 in the morning, on her phone. Like, she should be
Oh yeah, no
rested.
phones in the bedroom.
Yeah, that's a good one.
They charge them. They charge them downstairs.
Yeah,
They go up to bed. There's no reason to have them in the bedrooms. We don't have TVs in the bedrooms either.
right. Yeah.
You know.
It's so, and I think that that's an important part. The culture, I'm sure that you've probably heard your kids tell you, like, or that, well, so and so doesn't do that. So and so's parents don't do that. I get that a
Yep.
lot. I'm like, well, like, I'm your dad.
Well, and what's great. So how old is your oldest now, Jason?
We've 18 and 19.
18 and 19. So I
Yeah.
don't know if you've had this conversation yet, but I feel like over the past maybe 6 months, so our daughter just turned 20. So you're right behind me.
Yeah.
But what she's telling me now is how grateful she is
Oh,
that
good.
we kept her from certain things. She's like, I'm so glad you made that choice. I'm so glad you didn't let me have that thing that I really, really, really wanted, or do that thing,
Yeah.
because now I know I wasn't ready for that. Right.
Yeah.
Like,
That's
she's more grateful now for the stuff that we said no to.
that's awesome. I haven't heard that yet, but I know I will one
You're
day.
getting there. You're getting there. It's coming. It's coming.
Yes, it is. It's coming. Um, Shifting. This is a lot. This is great. I really appreciate you taking the time to come on. And I just want to let everybody know we talked before, and you have agreed to do part two.
Oh yeah.
So we are going to continue talking, but let's shift the gears just slightly. I know that you are passionate about aromatherapy,
Yes.
and this is something that I really don't know a lot about. I know that there's circles of people that just rave about it, and it's changed their life.
Mm-hmm.
So change my life. I'm ready.
Okay. So, well, you know what? I'm going to lose battery on my laptop. Can you fill like 2 seconds and I'll go grab my charger?
Yes.
Are you
No,
okay with
yeah,
that?
for
I'm
sure.
sorry,
Yeah, we
guys.
don't want
I
to
just,
die.
all of a sudden I looked and I was like, come on, I might die.
Yeah,
I'll be
no,
right
don't.
back. I'm
Yeah,
going to go
no
grab it.
worries. Yeah. So just while she's gone, guys, just want to really encourage you to, take the risk. You're the parent, and going back to when we were talking about the power of the connection and power of the connection you have with your kid, it's a connection that nothing can break that. Even your mistakes, let me tell you, your mistakes will not break that connection. We've all made mistakes. I continue to make mistakes, but no matter the mistakes we make, it does not disqualify you from being a parent. It does not disqualify you from having a right to speak into their lives. It doesn't disqualify you from stepping up and hitting a reset button and admitting, hey, I'm sorry, I did this wrong, and then going back into an active mode. I really feel like there's an activation that needs to happen among parents now, especially with parenting through the teenage years. And that's part of what I want to do. And, just so you guys know, we're working fervently to create a program and to create a couple different courses that we'll soon be able to offer you guys to be able to dive, that'll give you a little bit more of a guided framework on how to, get back in the game of parenting, get back in that role of parenting, so that we can save our kids, so that we can keep them safe, so that we can teach them how to be good humans when they get out on their own. That's
Yeah.
like, it needs to happen, guys. And don't rely on anyone
Amazing.
else to teach them. Don't rely on the school system. Don't rely on you're the one that gave birth to them. You're the one that paid for them. You were the one. And
Hmm.
if
I
you,
love that.
yeah,
Because, we don't get a handbook when we come home
no,
with that baby. Right. And so you
yes,
don't have a handbook when they're teenagers either. And
right,
so you're going to provide people with a little bit of a handbook,
yes,
right?
yes.
And that's incredibly important. Like, knowledge is power.
Yes. So just a real glimpse of this, it's called PATH. One of the programs is called PATH, Parenting Accurately Teen Hack. That's going to be awesome.
Ah,
We're really excited
nice.
about it.
I can't
Yes.
wait. I can't
So
wait.
keep on the lookout for that.
Okay. So thank you. I appreciate that.
No
All of a sudden
worries.
I got like, went to the red and I was like, no.
That would be bad.
I know that would
I'm
be
glad you caught
terrible.
that. I'm glad you caught it.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. And I was fully charged, but I got to have my laptop looked at. Anyway, technology
Yeah.
can be awesome, cannot be awesome. Depends on
Very
the
true.
day. So aromatherapy, I think it's really funny that I am a nurse aromatherapist, to be honest, because if
Uh-huh.
you had asked me 23 years ago when I became a nurse, what I thought I would be doing now at this point in my career, this is not a thing. This wasn't even on the radar. I was heavily entrenched in Western medicine. I worked for the past 23 years. I just retired in November at a huge medical center in Philadelphia, the premier teaching hospital in the area. Amazing, incredible place that I learned from for 23 years. So, but very, very Western medicine, very traditional. right next door to my hospital is an amazing children's hospital where my son, Jeffrey, has received a lot of care. They're kind of the same way, a little bit, not necessarily open to alternative and complementary therapies.
Right.
And so that was my background. And I worked in the trauma ICU. So car accidents, gunshot wounds, stabbings. Wow. Yeah, that's what I did. I met people on the worst day of their life, wow. Basically, for a long time. Yeah. And then I went into, I did like an about face about 7 years ago, and I went into hospice and palliative care. So that was awesome. It was that type of nursing is very spiritual. Yeah. And it was really life-changing for me to have that experience. But kind of coinciding with that was my son's own medical issues. And I was starting to become pretty jaded with the medical community for my son, because I was met with a lot of, right. Maybe you could try this, or here's this prescription. And I was like, he's 4. You want me to put him on this med that I know is like, wow, lots of side effects. Like, I knew this because of the nursing that I did. So I really felt very alone in the process. And I had to figure it out by myself, like how to help him with his health. And he was so sick, and there were so many moving parts with his health, and not just his physical health, but his emotional health. And so I just started learning. I just started reading things. I started picking up books. I looked into nutrition. I looked into sleep, right. The impact that sleep has on health and rest and inflammation. And I mean, just all of these things. And I started using essential oils. And to be honest, I was a huge skeptic. I was like, really, this drop of lavender is gonna really, I was like the worst skeptic ever. But I was also, I was a skeptic with a side of desperation. So I was like, I will try it because nothing else I'm doing is working. So maybe this is my shot in the dark. And then I had success, profound successes. And and with all my kids, not just Jeffrey, and with myself as well. So I was not in the best health at the time. Stress and not sleeping had really done, wonders, horrible things to my body. And so I knew I needed to take control of my health as well. And so, I just started dabbling, and I started trying things, and I started having success after success after success, and stuff that I couldn't explain. I was like, wait a second, how did that work? Right. I remember one time my youngest son, he gets nosebleeds. He used to get nosebleeds all the time. He was the kid, he'd wake up at 4:00 in the morning, it would look like he was murdered in his bed, blood everywhere. You're like, what happened? So this happened a couple nights in a row. And then I finally was like, wait, maybe there's an oil that can help. Because nothing else was working. What do you do? We don't really have any answer for that, right? So other than cauterizing their nose, I was like, I'm not sure I want to do that. So I pulled my book out, and I had the oil. I had never opened it. I had the oil that it said to work. I'm like, okay, next time it happens, I put it right next to his bedside. Well, like clockwork, next night up at 2:00 in the morning, blood everywhere, get him into the bathroom. I'm like, I had to put it on his nose, and I'm going, Bailey, this drop's gonna on the outside of his nose, really. Me as a nurse, I'm just like, I don't, this is not going to work. Jason, he literally, I'm so glad my husband was awake with me, because we looked at each other. His nose stopped bleeding.
Wow.
He didn't even need another tissue. He took the tissue, because he literally took the tissue away and was like, I think I'm done. And then me as a nurse, I'm staring up his nose, do I see anything?
You want to make sure it's done.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then I started using the oil before he went to bed. I was like, well, let's do it before he goes to bed. And he stopped waking up with nosebleeds.
Wow.
And so it was those things that led me to then figure out the science, because then I wanted to understand how they work. And so that's when I, decided to become a nurse aromatherapist. I really wanted to have that knowledge base. As a nurse, I feel very strongly that I I need to know at least some of the things, within my scope of practice. And then we started my hospital, and when I was in hospice, we started an aromatherapy program with our hospice patients. So that was really awesome. That was kind of when it all came together, like my professional life and my personal life started to meld. And I started to see the bigger vision for maybe what I wanted to do with the rest of my career. And so I switched gears about 3 years ago. I'm still working in nursing, but I feel very strongly that the special needs community is a very underserved community, and a lot of families are looking for alternatives, but their life is in such crisis all the time that they don't really have time to do a lot of the research that I've already done. And a lot of the health breakthroughs that I've had with my family, I just want to be able to pass on. I mean, we went from, Jeffrey at age 10, probably missing 30 days of school a year at least, because he was sick. He was the kid that, like, if somebody got sick in the classroom, he was like super sick and in the hospital. He got it and got it the worst. We went from that with him to now he like never misses school unless he's got he has doctor's appointments sometimes and stuff because he has people he follows up with. But his health he's done like a complete 180. Yeah. And then I started pulling in the emotional benefits of essential oils, like how can I help him with his, some of his behaviors and some of his, when he would escalate, like he would get anxious or frustrated or overwhelmed, like how can I pull this in? And I started to do a lot of research on the emotional connection. And what I realized is that these are tools that he can use safely. Right. Like, I'm not going to let him go into my medicine cabinet and self-medicate, even with a Tylenol.
Right.
Like my son cognitively really can't do that. But you know what? I can make him a roller bottle for when he's feeling nervous, and he can grab that and use that without me. Wow. And what has happened, because I've given him those tools, is he has so much more self-awareness than some of his other special needs peers, because he will say, "Oh, mommy, I need my oils." Like where I need, and that's a huge step for him to really be able to self-advocate, right? On his own health journey. And it's been really powerful for our family.
And so there's different oils for different things and different combinations. And I'm sure that there's a whole world out there in oils. Is there one, and maybe there's not, but is there one oil that you feel like that should be in every house, in every home?
One? You're only going to let me choose one? You're so mean.
What is the biggest one or the most? I'm sure there's maybe not an answer for this, but.
No, I mean, there's an answer. I would say lavender probably, just because lavender is very calming. It's also really great for like mosquito bites, or if you have like a cut that's like really red or a burn or a blister. Lavender can work really well. It's got some great healing properties as well. But if you're having trouble sleeping or somebody's feeling anxious, lavender is really great. From a special needs family place, I probably would go with frankincense. Frankincense, was one of the gifts to baby Jesus. And once I started doing research on frankincense, I was like, now I know why. It was so precious and so prized. But it is a really powerful oil for the brain and nervous system. Wow. So when we talk about our special kids, especially autism, ADHD, a lot of the sensory processing stuff, I mean, that's all, related to what's happening in the brain. And so frankincense is really powerful for that. So it helps you with mental clarity, focus. It's also very grounding from an emotional perspective. So I feel like, and I know for myself, if I'm feeling anxious, you're kind of like whirling up here, right? Yeah. You're just like, and so frankincense allows you to kind of center and bring it all down. So like your world may not have changed. You still may need to do the 20 things that you need to get done, but now you can like focus and move forward and do that first thing. That's the way, like the feeling I get from frankincense.
Yeah. In case somebody's wondering, I mean, you shared the story about the nose bleeding and how you were able to stop those just with oil. What oil was that?
So that was actually an obscure oil, which is why it was closed. I didn't know what to use it for, but it's called helichrysum. Another word for it is everlasting. It is it's a little bit more, it's one of the more expensive oils. And it actually comes from a plant, this beautiful plant that the flowers are yellow and they retain their color, that yellow, vibrant yellow color for a long time, which is why it's called everlasting. But it has great properties. We call it a liquid Band-Aid because it can help stop bleeding. This is exactly what it did. It's great. It's great for wounds. It's also really good. It's an anti-inflammatory, potent anti-inflammatory properties. So I use it for that. My son, just 4 years ago now, started with a migraine disorder. To add insult to injury, this kid has had, it's like there's a laundry list. And that's one of the oils that I use to help, manage his migraines, and it's really helpful. So,
wow. So if somebody's interested in learning more, do you have a resource for them, or a way to?
Yeah. So I actually, I'm on Facebook. My business is Family Wellness Warriors. Because that's what we're doing, taking back our families, health and wellness.
We'll put the links in the post a bit later in the comments.
Okay, great. Yeah. And and what I do actually is I run challenges every month for families who really want to radically transform the health of their family. Right? When you kind of realize, like, we got to get this together. Something's not working. None of us feel good. Somebody's always sick all the time. Like, enough is enough, like that point. And so I do a 7-day challenge with education every single day. It's not only on essential oils, but it's also exercise and stress and nutrition and, how to get good night's sleep. Lots of strategies and things that works for my family. The way that we have what we do on a day-to-day basis, I will teach that to you. I'm really big on simple steps. I think that we get in the weeds and we get overwhelmed with all the changes that we need to make. And that doesn't serve anyone, because then you're completely paralyzed. So through my challenge, I teach you what you need to know, and then you implement some simple steps over time that are going to make a huge difference for your family.
Excellent. Well, we definitely want to encourage everybody that if you would like to learn more and get in one of those challenges, we'll post the links so that you can do that. I can't believe that
the next one's February 8th.
Okay, excellent. Awesome.
Yeah.
I can't believe that an hour has already passed.
That's crazy. I feel like we talked for 10 minutes.
Yes, we've got to continue. So thank you for agreeing to come back and joining us again. I will post the event later today, but just so you're aware, on Tuesday at 10 o'clock Pacific time, we're going to come back on the 28th, Tuesday the 28th, so this coming Tuesday. We're going to come back and continue this discussion on building strong families, and I'm sure we'll go deeper into the oils a little bit. And so definitely want to invite you guys back. Thank you again, Kami, for joining us. It's been awesome. So I've got to ask you, in your mind or in your viewpoint, what is parenting accurately?
So I loved that he did give me a little hint that he was going to ask this question. So I got to think about it. But my first instinct, and I always try to go with my first instinct, is leaning in to your intuition as the parent, that you do know best, that God has given you that knowledge and that power to be in the driver's seat for your family. And so take that power back from the world, from whomever you've decided to give it to, and just own your own knowledge of your family, especially your children, and just do the next right thing. It does not have to be perfect. It only has to be done in love. And that's exactly how it's going to be received. And just continue to do that.
Yeah, that's powerful. Awesome. Thank you so much. And
you're welcome.
I look forward to Tuesday.
All right. See you
Tuesday.
Awesome.
Thank you so much. All right, guys. That such a powerful conversation. Thank you for joining us. I want to just remind you about the website, parentingaccurately.com. Feel free to go there. We've got a resource there for you that is free. And thanks again, and we'll see you guys Tuesday.